Greatness in sport is a much used term, but there are some sports persons who by their sheer numbers go on and achieve it. I'm joined by an absolute legend of sport who wasn't just a sporting great, but he also did something which every athlete aspires for. That's invincibility. Ed Moses, thank you so much
Thank you.
for joining us. You know, sport has this remarkable ability to transcend generations. I wasn't born when you won your first Olympic gold, but all of us growing up learning about sport have been inspired by your story.
Thank you, and thanks to YouTube, you can see those old races because 15, 18 years ago, there was no place you could go to find the archives on my races and see it all. But now, most of it is posted online, thank God.
We used to wait for the Olympics to come around because that's when you got these special features in newspapers and magazines. Right. But now, as you rightly said, everybody has access to all old records. I could even find footage of Jesse Owens at the 36
That's
Olympics.
Right, yeah? That's right, and that's amazing. I think it really puts a lot of sports and a lot of people like myself who were in the past in a position where our resumes are present and easily accessible, so that changes the game for us.
You know, Ed, invincibility in sport is something every sports person desires, but very few achieve it. You know, if you look at sport currently, you have Rafael Nadal's record in the French Open finals, played 10, won 10. You go back in history, there is the Indian hockey team where I come from, 1928 to 1956, won every match and lost just a final in 1960, all gold medals at the Olympics. And then there's you. Across a near decade, you were never beaten in your event, and 107 finals you won consecutive. That's massive.
Yeah, and I think it's not really about the competition. You can't wait until you get to a competition and say, okay, now I have to win. You have to do it virtually every day in practice, and you have to live your life so that you're thinking about winning a lot of the time, if not most of the time. And then there's times where you don't think about it at all, but you can't wait until the game starts to think about winning.
Yeah, but you know, you dominated the sport to such an extent that you knew you were the best. But did it take a special mental preparation? Because you're going out there, you know that you're not perhaps going to be pushed, you're going to win, but all it takes is one slip up and it could go.
Well, here's the thing. I ran 15 to 20 races a year, times 3/4 of a second. So you're talking about 12 to 15 minutes of actual racing, which is no time at all. But you know, I might spend 3-5 hours every day minimum training. And so every training session, I thought about maximizing my performance. I didn't wait until it was time to race. It was like every day, you know, when it's cloudy and rainy and hot and cold and no one's out there, that's when you decide that you're going to be a winner. At least for me, that's what the case was.
You won your first Olympic gold in '76 in Montreal. You ended up winning 2 Olympic gold medals. But Moscow, you should have won the gold had you gone. But obviously there was that boycott which happened at that point of time. Is that a regret when you look back that you could have ended with 3 Olympic gold medals?
It did, but it probably changed history to the way that it actually is. Who knows, I might have gone to Moscow and then lost a race, you know, the year after and had no winning streak. So I'm happy with things the way that they are. And I know that, you know, a winning mindset can be communicated to people. A lot of people have the average person has many other elements, but they sometimes don't know how to put it together because most people are not in a objective professional environment where they're measured every day and their outcomes are measured every day, because there's no excuses in track and field. There's no substitutes and there's no help coming. So you have to have it in your own mind.
Yes, you know, at that point of time, the Olympics were supposed to be apolitical, but now you see what's going on with the entire drama at these Winter Olympics around Russia, North Korea. Do you think that perhaps in hindsight, you all could have done what the British did, send a neutral team? The neutral teams are in fashion these days.
No, I don't think so, because it was our Olympic Committee, the United States Olympic Committee, that voluntarily made the decision. So we didn't have any options, and I think the Congress was involved. It would have been illegal for us to go over and do that. They would have made it very tough on us, and there wasn't that much expression during that time. Before that time, there was a lot of social unrest and social expression in the United States, but then it kind of went away you know, in the mid-'70s, and we didn't have the means to communicate our issues. If it was social media back then, it would have been a completely different ball game. But all we had to go on was basically what was reported in the paper and on the 6 o'clock news. But there was no cable news outlets, none of the social media. So we were pretty much captive by the way news was reported back then.
Do you think that today the Olympics have become political? You know, ahead of the Olympics in Rio de Janeiro, the IAAF decided to ban Russia. The IOC did not do that. They allowed Russians to compete. And then belatedly, December 2017, they banned the Russian team from these Olympics. And a lot of people are now saying that the decision to allow Russia at the Olympics is essentially neutral athletes as a cop-out.
I thought that it was a very weak decision because you know, I'm on the executive board at WION. I'm in charge of the education committee, and I get to hear the evidence, see the reports, and I think it's quite clear that there was a huge conspiracy involving multi-levels of sports and government to dope their athletes. It's been going on for a long time. I've traveled to Russia on multiple occasions to actually bring the testing machines to the Soviet Union as it was back then, back in 1989. So I know the story and have been watching it unfold for years. So I thought it was a pretty weak decision. The athletes were quite clear on what they wanted. The evidence is quite clear. I think a lot of it was ignored. And there's going to be, I think it's not over yet. I think there's still going to be, I know that there are a lot of athletes who are disappointed, but once you get so close to the Olympics, it's a known fact that the athletes you're not going to hear that much from them when they begin to think about competition. So the story's gone away for a while.
But you know, as one of the crusaders for clean sport, and you started this way earlier than this current, you know, clamor for clean sport which is happening, do you think that when you think at what's happened, you also raced at a time when there was state-sponsored doping back in the Cold War era as well. You think the IOC has let down clean athletes? They say we will protect the clean athlete, but they haven't done enough.
No, I think they perceived the athletes who were possibly subject to being doped by their country. To me, those weren't really the clean athletes, and the only sanctions that you could do would be to put on the Russian Olympic Committee and all the other sports, and then they would be under the duress of the athletes. They would be pressured by the athletes over there to do the right thing for them.
You know, also there's, just before the Olympics happened, you had this entire drama of will they be allowed to compete, won't they be allowed to compete. The Court of Arbitration for Sport threw out life bans, which were hastily imposed just a few months before the game started as well. Dick Pound, who you know pretty well, has been a vocal critic of the IOC and said people don't just get together and take tough decisions. Do you think the IOC has become a cozy club in that sense, which shies away? It's only involved it wants to ensure that the big money comes in from the broadcasters. They're seen with making the right noises.
Well, I think just because I was an Athletes Commission member and on the first Athletes Commission, I know what happens. And I think the executive committee is handpicked by the president, and he puts the people on that he wants. The designees that come to WADA are handpicked by the president and from the federations, and they have a certain agenda. And it doesn't really work with what the athletes need to have true clean sports. And it's very, very political, and I think it's coercive in a sense.
Yes, because...
and that's just the way it is. But it's a very political organization. They have a set agenda, and they feel that all sports should operate the way that they dictate.
Yeah, and we're seeing that in boxing right now as well. A lot of issues happening there. But, you know, Ed, it's not just about doping, because you see the problems the IOC faces. There are hardly any takers for hosting their big games. 2022, it came down to Beijing and Almaty. 2024, it came down to Paris and Los Angeles because the prohibitive costs are involved as well. The IOC then decided, okay, we've got two great ones. Let's give one to Paris and one to Los Angeles. And there's now even talk of e-gaming becoming an Olympic sport. For all of you who trained, as you said, so hard day in, day out, that's if you're going to decide Olympic sports on the basis of what sells on TV, then you're going away from the core values of the Olympics.
Well, I think as we go forward, I think well, the Olympics are set for Tokyo, Paris, and Los Angeles, so those three are out of the way. I think the next Winter Olympics is in Beijing, so those are selected, and we'll see what happens after that. It's very expensive to put on an Olympic Games. I think Tokyo's had a large budget, and now it's multiple times what it was supposed to be. I'm hoping that in my city, in Los Angeles, that we were able to stay within budget because most of the building will have been completed by then. So it's a matter of just putting up, all the things that need to be operational. But there's not a lot of countries in the world. There's been talk about having an Olympics on the African continent, but if $10 billion is a lot of money to just give away and not get anything for it. And some of these countries would be best served to look out for their social programs and health programs and education programs and not think about an Olympic Games.
Since you brought up 1984, I have to ask you, because you took the oath at the 1984 Olympics on behalf of the athletes. As a sporting icon, as an American sporting great, how does it feel for the Games to come back home?
It feels good. It's quite a long time from now. We're talking 11 years. Yeah. 11 years. It's going to be quite a long time. 10 more years, actually, now. 10 years. It's going to be a long wait for the Games to come. But Los Angeles will definitely be prepared. All the venues are done. There's so much building and construction going on. I think they're redoing the airport again, which they did in 1984, building new highways, building new public transportation. And the city's actually looking very, very different than it did back in 1984.
Yes, and perhaps earlier in 32 was very different as well. But just wanted to ask you a question which has dominated attention across the world. We're talking about American sport. This relates to the scandal which has happened in US gymnastics. Now, the American system is respected across the world because you've got this remarkable ability to find talent at the young age and then harness it and bring it through the various schools and colleges right up to the Olympic level. Do you feel that what's just happened right now with this scandal which has happened, that parents could fear sending their kids to play sport?
Well, child sexual assault is something that can happen right up under your nose and right in your house. I mean, there's cases where mothers, not only fathers, but mothers have molested their own children right at home and the other parent doesn't tell. So it's something that's very insidious and very dangerous. And you can put a lot of checks in place and balances in place, but predators like that have a systematic way of getting around all of that and making people feel comfortable, making the victims feel comfortable and afraid to report, making parents not believe their children. So it's very insidious, and I don't know if it's possible to stop it in every case. You can uncover it little by little, but the uncertainty that's involved with the kids, with the parents, with other people around the situation, and the fact that it's all wrapped up in a whole sporting and social environment makes it very difficult to detect. I think it's abhorrent, and this gentleman is going to die in jail, which is, he doesn't deserve to be out on the street. But the numbers of girls, and I think it went up to like 260, it's just unbelievable, unbelievable. And it's, it's very, very difficult to put the blame, years after a lot of it has happened. And that's what's going on right now. Everyone's trying to fixate blame, and, the damage has already been done. It's very, very unfortunate.
It's unfortunate, and I think now a lot of questions are being asked, and perhaps checks and balances will happen across all sports now, because a child playing sport is just out there to enjoy. Mm-hmm. And that enjoyment shouldn't be taken away by parents who think,
It's true, and in some places in the world that kind of behavior is tolerated a lot more than it is in the United States. We don't like that in the United States. I would be hard-pressed to be able to hold myself back if I witnessed something like that, someone treating a child like that. Yeah.
Is this where perhaps the Laureus Foundation can step in? You'll have some great gymnasts. At this point, a lot of people are scarred. They perhaps need a comforting arm around their shoulder. perhaps this is where the foundation could, and Laureus could step in the organization, with your greats and just talking to these kids, talking to and keep inspiring more kids to continue and not to get, not to let this affect them.
Well, number one, when you do tend to get involved in these kind of activities, you can do it as a private person and make comments, which is quite gallant. But what you really want to do is get involved with the organization that's actually going to do something about it. I know that they've started safe sport in the United States with the United States Olympic Committee, but they started it well after all of these transgressions had happened. So now that they're in place, they can only do their best to really try to catch up. And due to the fact that it's a criminal inquiry, there's just a lot of information they don't have access to. So it's an uphill battle, and it's going to continue. Those kind of things have been rumored to have gone along for years and years and years, not just in gymnastics, but in other sports, and indeed in other countries. So it's probably the worst thing that can happen in sports. It's way worse than the doping crisis, when you're talking about the, little girls and also some young men as well, and what they have to deal with for the rest of their life.
Yeah, I think let's just change the tone of this conversation and talk about your role with Laureus. You were the founding chairperson of the Academy. And over the years, you've got on board almost the who's who of world sport. I mean, you sit in that room and look at all the legends who are there. It's like the most exclusive sports club in the world.
Yeah, and it's fantastic. We've grown from, I think we started with 28 or 30 Academy members, and now we're up to 60. So we have a whole new generation of Academy members, and communicating in a whole new way with the kids, and the research that we do. The organization's really changed, and I'm just quite proud to have been involved in it, because we didn't know what was going to happen back in the year 2000, especially those first 7 years. We were just trying to put something together that would work. I mean, I think we've done a great job.
Absolutely, and I think this is a celebration of all of that. All of you, Academy members, ambassadors, all have different lives, but you come together for various causes. What are the things you're especially proud of when you look back at your journey with Laureus and on the things you all have achieved?
We have interacted with over 2 million kids. We've been in probably 60, 80 countries. I think we've probably total all the projects we've started with and did business with, whether we still do business or not, is probably close to 200. And I think that the Academy is really dedicated to doing the right thing, and they really believe in Laureus, and that's what makes it happen. Yeah. And also very proud to have had Mercedes-Benz as a sponsor from the beginning, and the Richemont Company, and their different brands, IWC in particular now, but we've dealt with several different brands. So there's not a lot of organizations like ours that have anchor tenants like that, if I could say that.
Yeah.
Anchor sponsors, and we're very glad that they're still involved.
This time, no Usain Bolt here this time. He's retired now, but he would qualify as a Laureus legend, wouldn't he? Academy member?
Yeah, at a certain point, I think we tend to wait until they're retired, and then you have to be willing to do the work that we do. We've had quite a few superstars, some of which are bigger than Usain Bolt, and have not really stepped up to the plate. Doesn't matter how big your name is, how many races you run, or how many matches you won. Really doesn't matter to us. It's what you're going to do, and how Sean Fitzpatrick feels that this person will do as an Academy member.
Okay. Just before I wrap this down, you're a legend of world sport, athletics. Just want to talk about your sport. A lot of talk has happened, who's the next big thing in athletics, because athletics invested a lot of its effort in promoting Bolt and Mo Farah. Both have retired. Sport isn't, athletics right now is at the crossroads.
Well, it always has been. I mean, people said the same thing when I retired, when Jackie Joyner retired, when Carl Lewis retired, when Roger Kingdom retired, Michael Johnson retired. They always say the same thing, but there's always going to be someone else who's going to be great. And so when you retire, you won't be running again. That's just the way it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And sport is the spectacle because of that, because new champions
There's
emerge.
always going to be someone new.
Yeah, new champions emerge. Thank you so much,
Okay.
Ed Moses, for speaking to us. And also thank you for just giving us incredible memories over all
Thank
these
you.
years. And as you said at the beginning, thanks to YouTube, we can all enjoy them.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay.
Thank you.